Joel Lalgee and Marcus Sawyer welcome you to AI and Recruiting, the show where they break down how AI is transforming hiring, leadership, and the future of work. Expect real talk, smart tools, and bold conversations with the people shaping what's next. Let's get into it.
Adam Bleibtreu, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, my friend Marcus, very well.
Good to see you. I've given you the first and the last name treatment, even though we've known each other for, what was it, 20 years now?
Just about, yeah. And you finally learned how to pronounce my last name. I'm so proud of you.
I know. I can't believe I've taken the time out of my busy schedule to learn how to pronounce your last name. So, as well as being just an amazing executive, fantastic friend, mentor, and all the other things that I would run out of time to talk about who you are and what you represent, you have been embarking on some really exciting journeys in the world of staffing and recruiting, which is what I know you from, as well as marketing, which is, I think, your original practice. And now you're combining a lot of the two, and you have recently not only been an executive at the company that you've started to join recently, but also you are now the CEO. And so I'd love you to tell me a little bit more just about what you're up to now and what you're focused on.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Chatting with you is continually a highlight of my days. And yeah, we have a few years and a few miles under our belt together. And thank you for the nice words. I am currently the CEO of SmartBug Media. SmartBug Media is the largest partner. It's a full-service digital agency and largest partner in the HubSpot ecosystem in North America. So think of us as a company that works on a retainer and a project basis for any HubSpot clients that are thinking about integrating the HubSpot platform or migrating data, or we're a full service agency, so we can run email campaigns, paid media campaigns. We have strategists, and we operate across North America, US and Canada.
Amazing. And how different is running this organization to being in the staffing and recruiting industry at a high level?
It's fascinating. So from a senior leadership position, and when we knew each other, I was in the staffing world. I was the chief marketing officer at both ASGN and one of its portfolio companies, Creative Circle. The strategic planning, the budgeting, the thinking about how an organization processes information, goes to market, a lot of that is very similar because leadership is leadership. How you build a team, motivate a team, manage a team, those skills have been a part of my learning process since I had a lawn care service in high school. The challenge at the CEO seat is really about the buck stops at your desk. We're private equity owned, and I have a great relationship with our private equity partners. And in fact, I was brought into the company by them. But you don't get to look around and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? Because everybody's looking at you to say yes or no to the idea. And it feels very comfortable at this point in my career to sit in the chair. There are certainly days that you are more challenged than others, but overall, I've made enough mistakes in my career to really feel like I can make some strong decisions that have a greater likelihood of success than not.
Yeah. I think your journey, and we've obviously had plenty of conversations around marketing at large, even when we've been driving in Santa Monica, and you've been schooling me on just some of the, I suppose, just the many ways that people go about and approach marketing. And then we've been likening it to the fact that recruiting is somewhat similar because you have to brand, whether it's a candidate, an organization, you have to give people that sense and that feeling and purpose. And you talk a lot about stories as well. What story are you telling and what are you sharing? So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is the evolution of brands in the age of AI. And I think that perfect intersection where you find yourself between marketing, which is the front end of an organization, through to talent. And you could say that's also the front of the organization, the middle and the back. How are you seeing that companies are evolving with this intersection between consumer brands and employer brands, and then kind of sprinkling on top of all of this small 2-letter acronym AI. Like, what is actually happening in your world when you think about those three areas?
Okay, we got this 2-hour podcast.
Yeah. This is a long cast.
Right. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. I will hop off of my usual very high soapbox and try to be somewhat quick for the folks listening to this. Consumer brands are easily identified: Apple, Coke, Nike, Lululemon. You have a company that has spent tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in media building an emotional resonance with their consumer. So I want to grow up and work for Apple. Well, it turns out, while I don't want to grow up and work for Apple, one of my children does. And Apple is a phenomenal employer for him. So the transition from your perception of a brand is delivered by the media bought and the marketing efforts of the brand into now you're an employee looking to build a work relationship with the company. So the brand changes. How do they answer your emails? How do they word their jobs? What's the recruitment process like? How do you build a relationship and network your way into it? So the brand perception changes because you're no longer a consumer of the brand, but what you're trying to do is become a member of that tribe.
Right.
And there's a subtle but definitive shift. So that's a little bit about brand and employer and employee brand. It's a different relationship. We as human beings, ethos at the core of our being, are a community animal. So we want to belong to things. We want to be a Niners fan. We want to be a Steelers fan. We want to belong to a religion, a political party. We want to belong. So having a company with a strong brand gives us a new tribe, a t-shirt that we're proud to wear. Then you layer in AI, which is fascinating. What AI allows is for speed and a methodology of messaging. You can, as an employer, you can find highly qualified, semi-qualified candidates faster. You can get them through a recruitment funnel faster. You can apply something that I hope we talk a little more about later, biases, conscious and unconscious, as part of the recruiting cycle. But at the beginning and the end of the story that you have as an employee looking for an employer, you're still, for the most part, leveraging the brand that is the consumer front of the company.
Right. And is that the same or different in a B2B world? So organizations that are B2B, their consumer brand is maybe not as strong. They still might have a somewhat of a consumer brand. There are many where you use them as an individual consumer and then you might convert as a B2B client. But I think that's also a struggle that a lot of organizations have had that are B2B companies. They don't have any consumer brand whatsoever. And so how do they create that connective tissue between what they say they do internally and then how they market that externally? Because you mentioned Nike, you mentioned Coke, you mentioned companies that people are aware of, but there are many companies that you also help to market and help to ensure that their brand is strong, both from a recruiting standpoint and from a, let's say, a marketing standpoint. How do you think about that? And does that actually change in the age of AI, or does it remain the same?
Great question. So 2 pieces. You're a candidate and employee looking for work. You're a aeronautical engineer and you wind up looking in the aerospace industry, which is strictly B2B. And there may be some big companies like Lockheed, Raytheon that you've heard about, but they don't have any real consumer marketing. Anduril, which is a new company that Peter Thiel and some others have invested in, you really don't know anything about, but you're still looking for a job. You're looking to further your career. So you have outreach and those companies have outreach, and somewhere there's an intersection. You're on LinkedIn, you're looking for engineering jobs, some things pop up, emails find your way through recruiters, and then you begin to experience the brand. Now you're a consumer again. What's the brand look like? Everything from its visual representation, its typography, the way it builds an emotional resonance with you is irrelevant to if you've walked into its store or not. Do you want to belong to this tribe? Do you want to feel an emotional resonance with how this brand feels? As silly as it sounds, I know people that haven't taken jobs because they didn't like the way that the company was designed from a graphics perspective. They didn't like the language that the company used. They used war or violent acronyms,
Right.
Go to war, battle, destroy. So your emotional resonance with a brand doesn't really change from B2B to consumer facing once you become interested in it.
It makes sense. And a good friend of mine, he is part of a really well-known footwear brand. And he talks a lot about telling emotional stories that resonate with folks.
Right.
And in order to find what that thread is and what that through line is, a lot of the time you're looking for, let's say from a brand standpoint, you're looking to connect with your tribe as a brand, or you're trying to attract people to your tribe, whether that is to attract them to work in your tribe and add value to the tribe, or they're going to consume the services or goods that you create from that tribe. And I think one of the things that I love about what you said that I haven't spent too much time pondering is the point in time which one finds themselves when they interact with a brand, and how you could be the same person, but you could be interacting with that brand at a slightly different point in time, and that changes or alters your perspective.
So that's the need want continuum. I need to find a job. A company needs to find an employee. I want to work for that company. I want that employee to work for me. I need a new pair of running shoes. I want those Nikes. Go down the list of running shoes.
Yeah.
The emotional continuum is irrelevant to B2B or B2C. It has no bearing. And in the old days, long before this thing called the internet was developed by Al Gore, they used to refer to B2B advertising as the guys reading the Wall Street Journal on the way to work on the subway in New York. And I'd say, yeah, but he puts that down and picks up the New York Post. It's the same individual. It's the same human being. It's the context within which he's consuming information. I should say they're consuming information, right?
Sure.
So it's context. It's nothing more than context.
Yeah. And I think we have a very similar philosophy to this, because I've been on both sides of, let's say, the recruiting space, which has been sales, where we met at the career, and then the recruiting side, actually doing the job of helping people get into a role. But I always come back to the thing where it's about connecting people to the right opportunity. And that opportunity could be a role, or it could be another connection, or it could be a product or a service. But at the end of the day, it's people, right? And so that's why we've built our platform in the way that we have. And you and I have discussed this. It's like, how are you going to connect to the right people to either sell your service or to the right people who want to be part of your service in the tribe? But I think what you're saying and what I'm hearing from you is and it goes back to how I think about AI. Context is king and queen. The context in which you have that conversation, how people perceive you to be approaching them in that environment, allows for it to be appropriate or inappropriate, maybe.
Right. You're a parent and you're time compressed fixing supper, and a child or a partner walks in and says, hey, would you, mom, dad, pick your analogy. And your level of stress is at a point as a parent where you're like, got to get dinner done.
Yeah.
And that person is crushed. That's context. Now, on the other hand, you're sitting on the couch, child partner walks in and says, hey, would you like to see what I made at school today? Would you like to hear about something amazing that happened at work, or something that crushed me at work? Context, the environment you're in with, allows you to look at the data set coming at you completely differently. And this is where AI becomes part of it. So you can build within certain value chains a way to decipher and evaluate data in real time on an inbound basis to say contextually, that's what I need to see right now. That's not what I need to see right now. And while the decisions that AI is making are evolving on a fundamental level, that becomes a really easy and phenomenally effective use of AI. And I know we've talked about it with your platform. I'm looking for a green goblin fits this profile. I have precluded brown orcs. Doesn't mean they're not good. It means
Sure.
I'm only looking for these. And generally in the recruiting space, you see too broad a spectrum, and AI in the recruiting space can become incredibly narrow very quickly and very deep, faster than any technology we've ever seen.
So this goes on to my next, I'd say, major question, and I'll park it as a topic just to give us a few seconds for it to marinate in the back of our minds, and then I'll talk about the question and frame it. But trust. So that word trust, and the context is important of trust, right? Like, you might trust some people at your job, but you may not trust the same people at with your kids, right? Like, so the
Right.
context of trust is key. And so how do you think, again, going back to marketing and recruiting, how do you think AI shifts the way trust is built or broken with candidates and employees? And there's many variables I'm throwing at you here, but does it shift, or do the underlying principles remain the same?
So I think it's both simultaneously, which is the good news and bad news of AI or any new evolving technology. So AI allows information to be created at a speed that's never been conceived of in the known universe that we're aware of. It's just unfathomable how fast it is. Now, is it real? Is it fake? Is it part fake? Is it part real? We're not going to get into a political conversation, but we're certainly aware that a significant amount of information is created that has no context. I was laughing the other day at one of my kids where if I put them in a library with a Dewey Decimal System and 3x5 index cards, they'd never find a book, right? Now the greatest library in the world is at our fingertips in your smartphone. So how do you build trust for a candidate that you want to work at your company? Or how do you build trust if you're looking for a job with an employer? And it comes that key element, which I think is the core of the question that I hear you asking, is actions. Applying for a job, you need something. Maybe your rent's due. Maybe you have financial pressures. Maybe you have loans to pay off. Maybe you have a mortgage to pay. Maybe you're just really tired and emotionally worn out at the job you have, and you need to get something. You have a need and a want. If the employer that you're applying to treats you unfairly, is not honest in its form of communication, we'll send you an announcement tomorrow. 3 weeks later, you've heard nothing. If they say the job is this square box and then they send you an application for a circle, right? Those things violate trust. From an employer's perspective, you came to me and said you want to be a square, but now you're asking me to be a triangle. Those violate trust. You told me you're available to come to an interview tomorrow in an online environment, and you ghost me. Those violate the trust continuum because you're not living up to the obligations of the promise of the social contract between looking and applying and reviewing and agreeing to an employee.
So one of the things I think about is the frequency of interactions and the fact that micro interactions compound. And that breeds reliability. It breeds a perspective in which you make a decision from. So our interactions, I know you really well to know that if I send you a note, you're going to respond within a certain time frame.
Right.
And so I trust Adam in order to do it. Doesn't matter when I message you, you will respond in a certain time frame.
Yeah.
And I think we all know people like that in the recruiting industry, and that's been like being responsive. And that is it's even more paramount for when you're interacting with somebody that doesn't know you, right? Because there's no question say, maybe they didn't get back to me because something was going on in their life. You don't really give them that excuse. But when you're building that relationship, every micro interaction builds trust. So I always find it weird when you get these emails from people. Cold emails are fine. I actually don't mind them. The quality of them is important. And then the second one is important. It's like, oh, I take it you don't want this service. Like, why am I going to follow back up with you at that point? Right.
It's, there's, I mean, as you've talked about it, there's such an emotional context to forms of communication. Yeah. If you're, and what I would add to your previous statement is channel matters.
Sure.
If you text me, I know it's important. I'm going to answer you literally right back. If you email me and it requires me to do that weird thing called being thoughtful, I'll be thoughtful and email you back. And obviously, if I see your name pop up in my phone, if I'm remotely able to take it, I'll take it even to say I'll call you back. So the channel of communication builds a certain level of urgency to the expectation of the trust.
What if I send you a letter?
What?
Well, yeah. If I send you some mail.
It's funny that you mentioned it. I am instituting a program at SmartBug where our account executives will be required to write a note to clients.
Yeah.
And in a meeting with leadership, they looked at me like I might as well have asked them to get on SpaceX and go to Mars. And like, what are you talking about? Write a letter. And I'm like, and I asked him, I challenged him. I said, when you get real mail and you open it, it's a physical experience. And mostly these days it's done in wedding announcements or birth announcements or something. And you're like, wow, the weight of the paper matters. The paper stock matters. The way it was printed matters. You know, my dad, look, really short story. My dad grew up obviously in the early parts and the mid parts of the 20th century. And he always wrote with a fountain pen. And I still have his Mont Blanc fountain pen. And every now and then I'll pull it out because it just reminds me of the art of letter writing.
My uncle collects and sells modern and vintage pens. And he's been doing it for many years. I think I told you. And he actually got me a Mont Blanc for my birthday. And as I have been thinking through just building a business and things that I want to do, I've decided not to do this stomping thing with my fingers and actually write. And I wrote about writing because it allows you, in my opinion, it's just kind of like the most natural way to channel and provide clarity of thoughts, because once you see it in front of you.
It's fascinating how many authors, screenwriters don't type. They either write longhand or they dictate. We think that screenwriters, TV show, movie, et cetera, sit down to a typewriter and write. So many of them don't. They write longhand, and then they have somebody that transcribes it into a typed form. It's fascinating. The way your brain processes data and information is fascinating. Now, in today's world, I'm sure my kids would look at me like I was crazy. Write a letter? What do you like? I'll type it. But that's another story.
But I think what you're saying and what I'm hearing is the channel matters. And if we talk about, let's say, mail as a channel, or when you receive something physical, the emotion that would evoke mostly is positive, unless it's a bill, right? If it's a handwritten letter.
Right.
So therefore, it's a channel that actually has less noise and more signal.
Right.
Because it isn't amongst thousands of emails. So when everybody's going left, you kind of want to go right. I'm also thinking a lot about what does it look like to align your brand and your talent strategy. So even if we talk about writing, and maybe that's a way, it could be seen as artisanal. And if that's seen as artisanal, if it's seen as a craft, maybe that would be associated with Mont Blanc. So if I was applying for a job at Mont Blanc to be the head of recruiting, maybe I would expect for them to write me my letter. But how do we align the two?
So think about it this way. How many informational interviews have you given in the last 6 months? How many people have you referred to friends to have informational interviews? Tens, maybe hundreds.
Yep.
Same as myself. Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you think about a job board, the visual hierarchy of a job board came from a newspaper.
Yes.
It came from sitting down on a Saturday or a Sunday morning and looking through the want ads. Now, I know half of our audience has no idea what I'm talking about, a newspaper, but you can understand visual hierarchy of the art form. Websites were developed as an evolution of newspapers and magazines, top to bottom, left to right. That's how they're laid out. You know, the newspapers and magazines have soft on the left, hard on the right. It's the fundamental layout of a magazine. So websites have evolved into a visual representation of a visual hierarchy that today's audience has no connection with. They watch 2.5 long seconds videos on TikTok and they're completely happy, and I couldn't be happier for them. So what should happen, I still watch long form, actually enjoy the director telling me a story, separate conversation, not a criticism. Think instead.
An observation.
Yeah, think instead about going to Raytheon.com.
Yeah.
And all there is a query box, a chat box. And you say, I'm thinking about a career at Raytheon. And through 8 or 10 questions with this entity, typing it, speaking it, irrelevant, you learn what life at Raytheon is like. You're having a conversation because today's human audience converses. They don't type, they don't write, they converse. But we're forcing them in the job application process to adhere to a system that's existed for 130 years, newspaper want ads. They just want to know what like at Raytheon is like. What do I wear? How hard do you work? Do you come in on the weekends? Can I wear jeans? How many days a week do I have to come in? So all of the questions that you would have a conversation about in an informational interview, if you had that with an AI-powered chatbot, your resonance and emotional consideration of the brand that provided that would change the paradigm forever.
On that note, I have been thinking about this somewhat because we've been doing some UX, UI, and I've been looking at where we are today and where we would like to be, but also some companies and how they got to where they are. Like, why are people using them? And if you break down ChatGPT, I'll ask you this question. What 2 products would you say ChatGPT is?
It's a research library. It's access to some of the greatest research library out there. And it's the fastest analytical tool I've ever imagined.
Okay. And then as far as the interface, what would you say are the components that make up that interface?
You mean like when I go to ChatGPT or Perplexity or something?
Yeah, exactly.
I think for the most part, they're still trash.
Yeah. One of the things I've been spending time just looking at is like, what are those products? And the search box is Google. It's just what Google was. It's a box on a screen. You put something into a box, the input box.
But let's back up. The search box existed long before Google. What Google and Apple did was simplify its visual design. It made it the only thing on the page.
Only thing on the page, because it was amongst AOL.
Remember
MSN,
Alta Vista?
Messenger. Yeah, no, I don't remember Alta Vista, but but AOL, MSN, I remember, and it was clustered, right? So it
was horrible.
But if you think about that search box, so similar to what you're saying, it's this one centerpiece where people feel like they put an input and they would get something out. And then the second part of the product is text. It's iMessage. It's 2 products combined that provide familiarity. What you do every day, texting, and then the input.
So again, I would say it's the logical evolution of the physical interface that technology's provided. So Apple got to a point and Google got to a point, thanks to Jony Ive and some other people, where they went to rip it all away, tear it all down, just one simple thing to focus on. And, oh, by the way, when kids, I don't know if you remember, like the 1 key you had to hit 3 times for a C, the 2 key, right? Okay. So again, the QWERTY keyboard, really, really interesting evolution. but what we're really talking about is conversational AI. So your your query box could be an icon. It could be a logo. It could be a circle. It could be a triangle. It could be anything. It could be a sound wave. The output of it should be dictated by your choice: video, audio, text.
And I think that depends on the context of the user at that point in time. So you're meeting whether your users and your clients, where they are. So we've gone through this so quickly, and I've got a couple of more points that I wanted to discuss. And one was really around the executives that you see or you hear, because many of them are talking about AI. But in your view, what separates the leaders who are actually using it to create an advantage versus those that are just chasing a trend?
Boy, again, I'll try to keep it less than 6 hours of a conversation. So you have to break it into public and private companies. Public companies have a huge issue with justifying CapEx expense of developing technologies that don't generate an immediate ROI, particularly in today's world. So leadership in public companies are hamstrung by economic forecasts and share price. I highly respect any leadership in a public company environment that's willing to invest in AI in the hopes that it will find something. Private companies, the exact opposite. And you'll find leaders who are finding AI targeted solutions. And by the way, I have to give a shout out to Yamini, who's the CEO at HubSpot, because she has publicly said, you know what? I want 80% of our employees using AI every day. Well, I use AI every day, as she said. So that's one way. Get your team to understand it and use it so you can apply it as business practices. Here at SmartBug, as part of the late 25 and all of 26 business plan, I've actually opened up an AI innovation lab internally. I've dedicated employees whose sole job it is to think about how AI tools can help us internally and help our clients externally.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's the challenge, right? Like, as you mentioned, as far as whether you're publicly traded or you're private, where do you decide to put your most important bets? Like, where are you focusing your team?
Right. I mean, your risk profile is so different that you're really hamstrung. And one of the few things that I would agree with the current administration on is a conversation about changing reporting from 90 to 180 days. You can't run an effective company having to forecast and reforecast and recast every 7 minutes. You need time to run your business, particularly in today's economic cycles.
Yeah.
Again, and separate conversation.
There's a lot of separate conversations that we might have to double down on, and we're going to spend a little time imagining. So based on some of the information, data we have, knowledge, but if we're to zoom out, and it feels like an absolute crazy question, but historically it would have felt pretty natural. Like, if we had zoomed out 10 years from now, what do you think will matter more? The tools that we've automated or the human capabilities that we've chosen to protect?
So human mind will never comprehend the speed or the depth of technology, period. You use 5% of your phone and 3% of your watch. So we have to accept the fact that we'll never catch up. The reality of the next 10 years is how the information is going to be consumed. So within the next 3 years, your computer screen is going to be your glasses. In the next 7 years, your computer screen is going to be contact lenses. The neural implants that will, quote, read your mind or read your thoughts are on one hand a fantasy, but on the other hand, not. So we'll have the capacity to access data and information and communicate at the speed of what would be probably light in 10 years. However, as emotional beings on the planet Earth, primarily, we hope in 10 years, our needs and wants haven't changed in 200 years. We want a community. We want to be loved. We want to be part of something. We have hunger. We have fear. We have all of the emotions that we feel. So the speed with which the emotional core of the human species progresses will never match the speed of technology. So The Steve Jobs of our futures, the Elon Musks of our future, will be the people that can marry identifiable, utilizable technology for the human condition as it exists 10 years from now. Remember, don't build them what they want, build them what they don't know they need yet.
Well, Adam, on that note, my biggest takeaway is timing is everything, and we are at time, my friend, for this conversation, not for our offline conversations. And I just want to say thank you for taking and investing your time to share the wisdom and insights. There's so many takeaways, and I think what I'm really taking away from this discussion is that we're constantly evolving. There's a ton of opportunity, but timing is critical and key, and meet people where they are, because context is king and queen. Anything else that you'd like to mention, Adam, before we depart?
First of all, it's been a tremendous pleasure as always to have a conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. And I would agree completely. I think for people that are looking to understand AI, and particularly in the staffing and the human capital world, you have to always remember context. And at the end of the journey, you most importantly have to remember the candidate. The candidate is in an emotional moment, and the kinder and the gentler and the more thorough you are in the way you treat them, the better your brand will be perceived.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to depart. And Adam B., it's been fantastic.
If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in your network, your team, your boss, or that recruiter still stuck in 2015. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss what's next in hiring and AI. Until next time.